It's a Dungeons & Dragons podcast that'll really make you think. We're spicing up the rules, mashing up the homebrews, and stirring up the debates. Add a little touch of our own, and you have Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captain's Recipes for Everything. With your host, the Pirate Captain.
It's not because I took on an entire ship by myself and walked away unscathed just off good looks alone.
Chef Bolgg.
I have in my rules for the original AG. Don't be a dick.
And Loke the Bard.
Lock the Bard bans all bards from his campaign. That wouldn't go over very well.
And without further ado, here are your hosts.
Well, that's right. We're back at it again. It's going to be a wonderful episode. We've got a lot in store. I know. I saw it. Welcome again to Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captain's Recipes for Everything. I am the titular Pirate Captain.
Let the pretty lady talk.
I'm going to let her talk, but we've got things to get to first. Usual.
Two cannon show here. This big bang.
Man. It's, I
Who's
know.
banging?
Everything's banging.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know, but there's tits.
She said the word. Welcome, everybody. This is Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captain's Recipes for Everything. I am the titular, like I said before, the Pirate Captain. With me, as always, are my bestest buddies, Loke the Bard.
Hello.
And the bestest of all buddies, my tall, green, handsome friend, Bolgg.
Hi.
What's up, everybody? Hey, we've got a lot coming up for you in this episode. This is the new player and new DMs episode. But before I get to that, I want to go ahead and shout out a couple things. First off, big plug to Amazon right now. Amazon picked up our podcast. So if you have Amazon Music, you can find us there now on Amazon. Just look up Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captain's Recipes for Everything.
That is exciting.
I'm telling you, man, we're growing, and it's all because of you guys out there that are listening to this right now. Keep listening, sharing with your friends, telling your friends, tell your enemies, make them listen to it, because if you enjoy it, they may hate it, and that's just enough to make them listen. New recipe. We got a new recipe out on the DMs Guild, and it'll be also on our Facebook, Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captains. I'm going to let Bolgg talk to you about that one, because it's his creation, and it's awesome.
Yep. So the newest recipe is actually stat blocks for yours truly and the Pirate Captain and Loke. They're high level. I mean, CR 24 for all of us, I think. So throw them at your 20th levels, see if they get along or if there's a little bit of mincemeat combat going on.
Did you really think I was going to go down that easy?
Yeah.
Or you'll just seduce your party and all live happily ever after.
Yeah.
Yeah. and there's some interesting magical stuff they could get from us, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a good one. I put a lot of love into this.
I'm excited, man. You've done a bang-up job with that. You guys are going to want to go check it out on the DMs Guild. You can find a link to it on our Facebook, Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captains. You just search it. It'll pop right up on there. Make sure you also, if you have any questions, concerns, gripes, bitches, complaints, Bolgg, BOLGG, and PC at gmail.com. That'll get us right to us. We've got big things coming, so expect that here in the next couple episodes. We're going to tell you what to do, where you can find us, and how to get that. And as always, a big shout out to our friends over at Phoenix Emporium. They've hosted us. They've done great things for us. If you guys need anything D&D related, I recommend, if you're in the Florida area, you're in the Clearwater area to be specific, go over to Phoenix Emporium. If you're a Magic the Gathering person, they've got everything you're going to need. Go check them out.
Digimon, Pokemon, they've got
all of it,
yeah.
man. They are big in the TCG. They do video games, you name it. Go talk to Shane and Spencer. Let them know you want to do something, and they're going to help you facilitate it. So big shout out to Phoenix Emporium. Now, to our titular lady, because she said it before I did. Actually, I think I said it after you, but it doesn't really matter. We have the wonderful Dravanan Shapresher, Drava the changeling druid. She's actually here with us today. She's our guest on this episode. Drava, go ahead and tell the world about yourself.
Hi. So...
She's super happy compared to the rest of us.
Well, she hasn't been ruined by the ravages of time. She basically spent most of her time in the woods, and it kind of helped because I wasn't very sure about what I was doing. So it would be like, oh, I don't know any of your history. I came from over there. And she would be very curious. She's a changeling mostly because I've done different things with her every time. She actually originated as a character off of like, AOL chat room role-playing kind of stuff, and all of it would go to message boards. And then when I started playing D&D, she was the first character I created, and And yeah, so she's a changeling because her she's done everything. She would be anything. But yeah, she's just kind of evolved as I go.
I miss the days of the old AOL chat rooms when you could still be, a strapping 32-year-old man with huge muscles and a sports car.
Yeah.
What kind of sports car? It's just a sports car. That's all you need to know.
She was in a lot of taverns.
But welcome to the program, Drava. You guys can always expect to have different guests. Sometimes it's just the three of us. Sometimes we like to incorporate our friends, our people that we've worked with. We've even had a professor, one of our top episodes that people like, Our Orcs Racist, where we had the professor on with us, and he gave a lot of insight to a lot of the topics coming to D&D. So check out our older episodes. But
And in this case, it's my real life wife.
it is his wife. I think we're trying to get my bestest, my real life bestest of buddies. Not to say that you aren't my bestest buddy. He's supposed to be coming in for another episode here in the future. But I have something that we were talking about at lunch, and I thought this was the greatest idea ever, and it actually came from your wife, and I think it's going to work out great. We're going to call this segment the Chef Bolgg hors d'oeuvres section, and it's not always going to be served by Chef Bolgg. These hors d'oeuvres are all the latest topics that have hit D&D prior to the episode releasing, something that you guys are going to want to know, information that's out there. With that, I'm going to throw it over to my boy Loke. Loke, what's on the hors d'oeuvres menu today?
Yeah, on the hors d'oeuvres menu, there's some big announcements that's come out real recently here from Wizards of the Coast and the D&D team. They recently did back on April 20th. They did their D&D Direct broadcast, which was like a 30-minute video that they put out. All the big stuff they've got in the works and coming out. And there's been big news that wasn't part of that video, where they've recently bought D&D Beyond. For those of you who didn't know, they didn't own that before. That was a third-party program, third-party software. It is now going to be a wholly owned subsidiary,
For better or worse.
of Wizards of the Coast. But one of the real exciting things for those of us old-timers, 5e hasn't put out a lot of the big campaign settings. Like they'll put out a book that is set in a campaign setting that'll give you the basic information you need to run something in that. But they don't. The old school campaign settings were box sets.
Yeah.
You would get maps. You would get multiple books. And it looks like what they're going to be releasing for Spelljammer is going to be a full campaign setting, where it's a 3-book set. There's a prequel adventure you can download and a preset thing of 10 monsters you can download for free from D&D's website, or now D&D Beyond as well. Now that they're all one company playing nice together.
Yeah.
Are they playing nice?
Yeah.
I tell you, I still stand behind what I said during lunch, was the fact that my biggest worry about them purchasing D&D and Beyond is if we're going to lose maybe some of the creators, but that's where we have the DMs Guild. They're a great spot for creators to post their content. So, but that's my biggest worry. I'm excited about that, though.
I personally am worried. I use a lot of third-party apps. I use a D&D companion app that is where I pull most of my monsters, manage my initiative orders, that kind of stuff while we're doing combat, while we're playing. It's the tool I'm familiar with, the tool I like, but it uses a lot of their licensed content. Well, now if D&D's D&D Beyond is going to be their primary channel, are they going to cut back, or even just bumping up the price on that licensed content may cut out some of these third-party apps to force, they want the lion's share to go to their software.
Of course,
so,
everybody does.
Yeah, and I understand that completely.
Yeah,
But
it makes sense from a business perspective, but for those of us who like some of these third-party apps, that could, and they haven't announced that they're doing anything of the sort. This is just me speculating.
yeah,
That could be something that's coming in the future, something to worry about. So it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and that's even something that like new players and new DMs, like almost everybody at the table uses those third-party apps, even though we also carry all of the books. So we have all of the regular stuff, but then we have some of the other things. So.
Yeah, and a lot of the third-party, like the character sheet app we use, it's free to create a level 1 character on that app, and then it's like $3 to buy the full app with all the classes, all the races, all the stuff. Whereas D&D Beyond, you have to actually go in and buy the specific classes or the specific book
And your digital dice.
Yeah, and the digital dice and all that kind of stuff to
so pretty.
create the full. To get the same effect, it costs a lot more. Which a new player, first time at the table, might not be wanting to dish that kind of extra money out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with D&D Beyond, if you're in a group, they have things where you can do sharing, and there is ways to make it I don't want to make it sound like they're too money hungry, but it's just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to
Yeah.
turn a profit.
Yeah.
A website like that's probably got a huge amount of servers is probably requiring a lot.
Yeah, but I'm excited about Spelljammer. If you're a newer player, you have no idea what Spelljammer is. It's D&D in space. It's awesome.
Space pirates.
Arr. All right.
And it is definitely designed for that space pirate feel. It's anybody who watched the old Disney cartoon Treasure Planet, that is kind of where they kind of go with the Spelljammer, where
A
you've
little
got
bit,
the,
yeah.
the-
And it's
the-
like
I mean-
seafaring adventures in space.
I
Yeah.
mean, all Treasure Planet was the Long
Tre-
John
yeah,
Silver
Treasure
Treasure
Island.
Island. All right.
Yeah, so that's basically what it is. What Treasure Planet is to Treasure Island, Spelljammer is to D&D.
Right.
You have your wizards, your warriors. You got all these classes.
I mean,
on
the
a
cover is Minsk and Boo in space.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. So that's one of the big things coming. Now they also released the title for the upcoming D&D movie that a lot of people have heard is in the work with Chris Pine. It's going to be called Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. All we've seen is the logo title sheet, so it's really hard to get a real feel how it's going to be. I've seen a couple articles saying that it will be set in Faerun, the Forgotten Realms, which would, if that's the case, that may be a step up from the old terrible D&D movies of years ago, who were just in generic D&D world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're objectively terrible, but the one that came out in the 2000s, I still unironically love for how bad it is.
Yeah.
I just looked up the cast list, and Hugh Grant's going to be in it.
Yeah, he's supposedly the bad guy. So
Yeah, so it's a.
You couldn't have picked a better villain.
They're spending the money obviously with this cast list. If it's got the special effect, now the big question mark is going to be the script, obviously.
yeah,
And then they also, keeping on other media that D&D is in, they've announced that Neverwinter will be getting an expansion to their MMO on all the platforms that it is on. It's going to be a Dragonlance focused, dragon slaying, dragon fighting type expansion.
That'd be cool.
So for those
That's what
who
World of Warcraft just announced too. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're gonna do dragons too. Everybody's doing dragons.
Yeah. Well, and if you're already a Neverwinter player, this is great news for you because it's new content.
Yeah.
But it may be something that brings in new play. I mean, 'cause it is a D&D based MMO, so something to try if that's what you're looking for.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
and
pretty
then
fun.
the never finished, still in progress, Baldur's Gate 3 will eventually be finished. Is kind of what they announced.
Eventually.
Yeah. But you could still try out the early access, just as it has been. So, but yeah, so that's the major news that has come out as far as what was in the D&D Direct. Now, a recent interview on the movie described it as a mix between Game of Thrones and Princess Bride.
With a little bit of Monty Python
with a little,
thrown in
yeah,
there.
with a little bit of Monty Python
I
thrown
don't know
in there.
how I feel
so-
about
Yeah,
that.
that's coming. That's
That's-
coming from Chris Pine.
That's coming, and that's generally what a D&D campaign turns into. So
So, and that would fit with what like the Vox Machina did on
Yeah.
Amazon.
The last line on here also says, "and with a bit of Goonies in there."
Oh,
Bit of
it's,
Goonies.
it's exactly what I need. I just need
So-
somebody playing Lars.
Yeah, so it is
hey,
complete.
you guys.
I mean,
Bolgg in there.
I got my hopes up, but I don't. We've been burned before. So.
Yes.
We'll
Well,
see.
This has been our hors d'oeuvres. This is something we're going to be trying out in for the next few episodes, see how it works. It's always going to be just the latest topic information you can find on D&D before we get into the main episode, which today, and you heard them mention it a couple times, it's the talking about new players. That's what this is about today. We wanted to give you guys tips and advice from not only new players, but new DMs. We've all been there at some point. You have stood in that seat where you walked up to the table, you didn't have your sheets, your books, you didn't even have a pencil. Which is, I'm going to tell you, rule number one, when you come to a table, always bring a pencil. But we're going to be talking about different things
never
that
bring a pencil.
Hey. And this is why
What's your
you're all,
pencil?
hey, you guys make it very hard to talk some days. I get a migraine right here.
You don't write with your enemy's blood. That's what I do.
I don't even know where to begin with this.
It's finger painting.
I use berries.
We're gonna.
It's
Don't you
delicious.
get in on this either, all right? Don't encourage these two numbskulls. All right. Some days,
He uses other
boys.
bodily fluids.
All right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got, like, I can always tell you, always bring a pencil because you can always write something down with a pencil on something, somewhere, any item, and that's all you really need to start. You can get a sheet of paper and create a custom character sheet right there off one. So don't ever feel like if you can come up to the game with anything. But these are our tips, things that we've learned in the past from being DMs. I'm going to tell you one of the first things I learned in as a DM was don't over prepare, don't overthink everything. Because sometimes you get up into the thing and you're like, well, I know I wanted to go this way, A, B, and C. They're going to do this. And how many times have you sat down as a DM, any of you guys, and you're like, well, we started off on A, and then somehow we ended up at O.
Every time.
Yep. Yeah.
Every time.
Every time. Players are going to do...
You're supposed to save... my players will save the princess this week. Oh, damn, they killed the princess. Now what do I do?
That wasn't even...
She was
that
an
wasn't even
oligarch.
that wasn't even an option. I didn't even...
She was behind a protective force field the whole combat. How did they manage to kill her?
Dem door.
It happens, man. And if you're sitting there as a DM, especially as a new DM, and you have these campaign settings out there, the idea of a custom campaign, I honestly, as a fresh DM, I would honestly recommend running a module. And you can argue with me on this one. I think that having a set structure and learning how to tell the story, not so much as the way it was intended, but a way that was built to meet the player's expectations on something. It helps you kind of curtail everything like, hey, this is what you guys are going to do. You're going to get derailed in a module. You're still going to go from A to O all the time. But it gives you that structure to kind of work through smaller, simpler processes before you go on to world building.
I'm going to go the exact opposite recommendation.
That's actually what I was going to say too.
I'm going to go... You want to go
Why
as
must you
free
fight
form,
me on everything?
You want to go as free form as possible the first time. You don't want to be bound by the rules. You want... where, if your players go to the left, you're making up where they're going to the left as that happens, because that memorization and preparedness kind of will lock you into a thinking, and as soon as it makes it harder to improv as soon as they
yeah, especially
step
as
off the path.
As a new DM, when I was making my what was going to be a one-shot, which turned into a campaign, it was very much I was looking at modules to kind of give me an idea. But if I had been working off of a module, when my players did something I was not expecting, I wouldn't have known where to go from there. But because I created a whole new thing and was just using the module as kind of like little hints on what I could do instead of what I had to do, that was a lot easier for me to follow.
And that's my stance, is a mixture of the both. You can use the module as a good basis of how to be a DM.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't fit what you want to do, by all means, change it.
Well, here's my argument to argue with you, a little bit against you. There's plenty of modules out there for everything. There is something for they are writing modules almost left and right. We actually have a module writer that's been on this podcast before. Shout out to James and Tactitious Publishing. There are plenty of things out there to meet you. I say that having that little bit of structure definitely helps you guys out, because if you do have players going, let's say you're not the quickest thinker, you're not an improv guy, that module has ways to kind of curtail the situation back into where you need to go, and it'll help you build those skills. Because you're not going to be the greatest DM coming out the gate. It just doesn't happen. And that's okay.
That I will agree with. It is okay, and you're not going to be the greatest the first time. The important thing is to have fun.
Yeah.
And
oh, no, don't sound like a damn Shonen Jump cartoon.
But in my
Friendship
opinion,
is power.
memorization is something. It's work. It's schoolwork. It's less fun for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not saying you got to memorize anything.
I'm saying that a free form. I mean, everybody's read or seen movies or watched anime cartoons that are set in a D&D-esque location. Steal your ideas from that stuff. Whatever your favorite sci-fi fantasy movie setting was, that's your plot. Copy that plot. There is no copyright at the gaming table.
Wizards of the Coast just walks in. I'm sorry, your podcast right here, yeah, we got to take this off the air. How did you get in this building?
Yeah, because nobody, George, the farm boy who some
He stole that
random
from the
server.
Watchers.
Yeah,
Like the whole idea, the concept. I know what you're talking about
Yeah.
with the especially that iconic scene where Luke's looking out over the burning buildings in A New Hope is stolen from the Watchers. It's a John Wayne movie.
well, and most of the Tatooine stuff is stolen straight from Dune.
Yeah.
The desert planet. Even the drug is still spice.
That's the craziest thing. But if you're stealing something, you might as well be doing the module because you're just copying what they're doing. It just gives you the structure. It gives you the numbers. It gives you monsters that you don't have to randomly create. It says, hey, go to page 202. You're going to be using goblins A through C. And you're like, okay, cool. And you go back there and the information's right there. You don't have to try and come up with something and create anything. I think that having, if you want to kind of free form off the module a little bit, like Bolgg was saying, where you go, okay, I want to give these guys a break from, going after the Lich. They're having an off day. It's a filler episode. We're going to go do the tournament arc or something stupid like that. You can. But if you just sit there and you work off that module as a first-time DM, you're going to have a little bit more structured time. You're going to be able to start building those skills of improv.
So when the first time I DM'd, I was working from the old simple adventure books, the Hall of the Hill Giants, that kind of thing. And I was working off that, and it happened again way later in life when I recently started trying to do Descent into Avernus, where I got bored. I'll be honest, I got bored with where the module was going.
Because some modules suck. It's okay.
And what I did back then is Avernus, I just stopped because it was right when COVID hit. But with the module I was doing back then, I just went completely off script, took them in a completely different direction, and that's how 3-4 sessions later we run our own campaign, just using that module as a starting point.
Right.
Which is absolutely okay. You can start in a module and then go, no, we don't like where this is going, and then let your imagination run wild. Everybody who's listening to this knows I'm a homebrew guy. I love making my own stuff. So that the modules quickly get boring for me, even the well-written ones, just because I like to take things in my own direction. And it's okay to do that. It's okay as a first-time DM to do that.
Yeah.
To just go and have fun.
Don't get me wrong. Modules have value. I steal stuff from modules all the time, especially the map. I am a terrible artist. I can't draw for crap. I will steal maps from modules all the time because their maps are going to be so much better than anything I'm going to put together.
Yeah, they've got topographical.
yeah,
they've got all sorts of ones that have things listed.
Yeah, they've got lava. It is nice, pretty red, and it looks like an underground volcano cavern or whatever. Where my drawing on a piece of graph paper is just going to be black lines. So it's nice to steal, and they also the modules will have a player shared map and a DM map that shows,
right?
Where you can give the players the map so that they can go ahead and work through, but it doesn't show all the secret passages or secret rooms, whereas the DM map does, so that you can, as you're playing through, you have that stuff. So there is value to having the module stuff available to you. I don't know if the first time session is where you're going to need that though.
Yeah, because I was so I don't think that if I had been looking at module, I probably would have never DM'd. The reason I even got the motivation to run a session was because I was listening to a playthrough podcast, and they had one character that I was like, hey, I could create an entire world around that idea. And then I was like, it would be really fun if I had all of our players just be Boy Scouts, because there was one character who was a Boy Scout, and that gave me an idea for an entire thing to run. So it wasn't me looking through modules or even wanting to DM. It was more of, oh my goodness, this would be so fun. I think the rest of the players at the table would really enjoy this. I should look into how I could DM this. So even my motivation to DM for the first time came from a freeform idea that I wasn't going to spend all my time looking for modules that would fit that. So instead, what I did was I would look at the handbooks, I would look at other modules just to get the ideas to say, okay, how do I actually progress this story in a way that would be fun for everybody?
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we've talked about in the past with the first-time players picking their character class. it's going to be different for different people. Like different things. Some people are big planners and like to to do a lot of the design work themselves.
Well,
that's part of the fun for them. Others want something pre-scripted.
And I guess this is actually on me because I kind of like turned this into a debate instead of going, hey, this is actually our tips. And so that's on me. That's where I should honestly be, pirate captain punched in the throat. Because I did almost turn this into a debate versus like, hey, this is what I think as a player or as a DM, as a first-time DM, you should do. So that's on me. And I understand your points, and they are very valid points. So, they help you create these problem-solving skills, these quick thinking, these improv skills that are going to help you later on down the line. Honestly, your best players are players who have been DMs for a long time because, one, they appreciate the role of being a player again, because how often are you stuck being a DM because nobody else wants to do it?
Yeah.
But then you go back and you actually get to be a player for the first time in a long time, and you understand the hard work that this new DM has put into anything, whether they're reading the module or they're doing a whole homebrew campaign. It's going to make you that much better.
And that's the thing. DMs who are playing in a new DM's game, help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help. It is you are such a good tool for them because you've been there, you've done it.
Reach out to the new player, the new DM. Especially if you don't want to DM anymore, reach out and try to coach a new player through it. Do a side by side. Sit with them. You may not get to play the first session or maybe even the first campaign, but sit with them. Co-DM. That's something you don't see very often anymore. I did it when I was overseas in Africa. Me and my friend, my roommate, we co-DM'd a whole campaign for our friends. I would write the story. He would do the encounters and be the DM itself. Mm-hmm. So I knew what was going on. Here's what's going to happen. Here's how it goes: left, right, left, right, left. And he would be the guy that goes, all right, you ran into a pack of goblins. Now you got to fight and stuff. So that's something you guys can very well do is find yourself a co-DM.
Also, if you have experienced players there who know the rules and can help, it's like, what's the rule for cover? And you can turn to that player and ask him, what do you add for 3/4 cover?
Yeah,
and they'll be able to spit it back to you without you having to look it up and actually having to know all that yourself. As a DM, you do not have to memorize the book. You don't have to know every rule. The table will help you.
Yeah.
Oh,
they will be quick to remind you.
Yeah, very much so. My first time, I was shaking. I have social anxiety. I was sitting there. I was like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this. I don't want to do this. But I wanted to tell the story so bad. And we were going through, and I was looking at, I was like, oh, how do we do this encounter? And all of the people at the table were like, oh, hey, we could roll this. It wasn't the mechanics that they cared about. It was the storyline. And that's kind of what you have to remember as a new DM. You are basically telling a story. You're playing, whether you do that for combat and you're combat heavy or more like mine where it was more role play heavy. It doesn't really matter as long as you kind of have an idea of where you want to go. So that kind of, you said that it was a debate, but at the same time, it brought up a lot of good points where as a new DM, you have options. You could be just following a module. You could create your own. You could do whatever you need to do as a new DM as long as you have a story that you want to tell or something that you want to accomplish, and your players will help you do that as long as you've got new people.
Okay, hold on.
With modules specifically, there's a YouTuber that I watch, Dravanan and I both watch Jack's films. He's a comedy YouTuber, has little to nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons, but in one of his Q&A episodes, somebody asked him, would you ever play Dungeons and Dragons? And he admitted, I'm not a fan of, not a fan of, but I can't do improv very well. Modules are built for that type of person. They are built for giving you everything you need in order to run the game. You'll pick up the improv stuff over time. And that's like, the modules are great for that. If that's the type of person you are, start with a module. It's what it's there for. Lost Mines of Phandelver is one of the most popular ones for a reason. It is perfect for newcomers.
I think actually you said something that I think is an even bigger point that we haven't even touched on is what does your campaign need to be? As a first-time DM, do you want it to be an RP-heavy campaign or do you want to be a battle-heavy campaign? And you can combine the two and have an RP battle style. But usually, as a DM, you're going to pick, do you want the story to matter more, or do you want the encounters to matter more? And it goes back when we were talking with James. James is like, I'm here for the player. All right, we're here to make sure that they're having a good time. So you got to figure out what they want. Are we battle hungry and we just want to roll roll that initiative as soon as we see the enemy, or do we want to figure out why the enemy's here to be in the first place? Ask those philosophical questions.
Well, and the other thing with the first time DMs that you might not want to start with a campaign. You might want to start with a series of one-shots.
One-shots are great.
Well, yeah, and that's, like I said, we started with a one-shot, and it was really just an idea, but I wanted to do role play because as a player, you do, when you do when you run a campaign, you do very well to try to make it more role play, but we're a bunch of murder hobos. And I'm not that combat. I wanted more role play. So I was like, okay, well, then maybe I'll run it. And mine was based on no combat whatsoever. So it was kind of like, as a player, I wanted to do something and nobody was letting it happen. And it has nothing to do with you, Loke. You do great. And you've been adding more and more and more, and we're kind of like calming down. But really, we go in, we throw stuff. It's, oh, you didn't ask a question, you just threw a table at the guy. So
what was that guy doing near my table?
Oh my goodness!
No,
It was his own table.
He was an
my
an
table.
evil guy with a skull for a head, so I threw a table at him.
But we had questions to ask him.
We'll ask questions later.
Yes.
Yeah, when he's dead.
They were supposed. Yeah,
Hey,
in that
speak with the
particular
dead as a
example.
spell. We can do that.
But it was really it was I wanted a one shot, and it was like, okay, well, this is a one shot that we're just going to do something different. But the rest of the players were really like, we should do this again. This was fun.
Yeah.
And it's just a different play style. It was just I had a completely different way of telling a story. It wasn't necessarily that I had a better way for role playing. It was just I had a completely different storyline. So they were able to focus on something different.
First time DM, and I was a very proud hubby. She did very, very well.
Oh man, I hated
Oh, way to be a mark.
Much better than I was in my first game. I can tell you, it was a
She
train
had
wreck.
that experience around there. That goes back. So tip number 3, I think, was what we'll call that one. Cater to the player. Figure out what the players want. Ask your players what they want.
Yeah.
I want to go ahead.
Kind of what she was saying. Give them what you would want. That's the way I based a lot of mine. Is when I'm playing in a game, things that frustrate me, I don't put those in my campaign. Yeah, like you don't see a lot of traps in my campaigns, because the way they work, they're just there as an annoyance most of the time to slow you down going through the dungeon. They don't make a lot. Like, who puts a trap in front of their home? It doesn't make a lot of logical.
You don't know many Vietnam veterans, do you?
Yeah.
Well,
Or people living in Tennessee.
Yeah.
in
So
the
so
summer.
if you're going after a doomsday prepper, yes, he's going to have some traps.
Yeah, but
But,
it would have to make sense to the character.
They have to make
instead of
sense
just,
to the location, and that's one of those things. So you just don't see a lot. Now, you should check every door for traps, because if it's going to be a trap, it's going to be on the door that he could disable as coming in and out of his building.
Yeah.
Well, as a new DM, you have to introduce consequences to your players.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because if your players don't feel like there's going to be any ramifications to their actions, whether throwing a table at the guy you're trying to get information from, which now lands you a bounty on your heads, or blowing up a city or something, new DMs.
I feel
absolutely.
attacked.
Absolutely. You guys got to make sure you're adding consequences to your players, and it's not you're not trying to be heavy-handed, fisted Fuhrer. No, you're just trying to make sure that there's ramifications for every good and bad action. Yes, there are bad things that come from good decisions. It always happens.
Yeah, we were actually talking about this at lunch, and I was talking about how during the second version of the campaign, I was sending everybody through whitewater rafting, and the mechanics that I had picked out didn't work. So this is another thing is I needed them to actually feel like they could fall off of the raft, or they could have something go wrong if they weren't working together. So I actually had to fudge some of my rolls, which as a DM, that's fine, because you don't have to let them know that you're doing that. So you can also, I always hear you're the DM, you make the final call.
I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
You're going to make the final call, but, we fudge and lie about so many things.
But so, and you don't worry about having to change your mechanics. That's part of the, it was a quick decision improv that I had to do because it was just going too easy. They were just going to go down a river, and that's not exciting. So I had to start going, okay, well, you're not doing that properly. Okay, so now you're about to fall off the raft. And then they had to kind of work together to try to get him back on the raft, and it actually turned into a more exciting encounter because they were running into issues that they weren't going to run if I had continued my mechanics the way I had originally planned them.
And that goes to another tip, is that It's a Captain Barbosa situation. The rules are more of like guidelines, really, because at the end of the day,
My
you
hero.
you at the end of the day are the decision maker. If you find that feats are overpowered, and you don't want that person to get
You want to
magical
talk about
dark
feeling
vision,
attacked.
take out feats. Makes life easy. Like, if that's too much for you to handle, take them out. If your players don't like that, then you might lose them as a player, and that's okay too.
If
There
your,
are gonna
if your
be
players
more.
are jumping off castle walls, you tweak the way fall damage works.
Yeah, and you can
Back to
pick
attacking Miyashi.
Yeah.
and you can pick and choose some of the stuff because there's like mechanics for weather events, and that actually fit with one of my campaigns, but not with the other. So the sessions changed what kind of mechanics I was like even keeping as a reference because it wasn't going to play into it. So I didn't hold on to it. Like I had it if I needed it.
Right.
But you can pick and choose what you're going to do. Okay, am I going to be terrain heavy? Am I going to be what can you carry? What am I going to be weather conditions? So you can cater whatever you need to do to make yourself feel more prepared and more comfortable as you're DMing, but also, so you don't overwhelm yourself. You don't want to have all this stuff. You don't need it all.
Right.
Yeah, and this is something you're doing. It's a hobby for fun. It's not, especially your first time. It's not your job. You shouldn't be spending a 40-hour week preparing.
Unless you want to.
If you're spending I think it's kind of like a study rule. A good study rule is like if you got like a 2-hour test, you should probably spend about at least 4 hours studying. So you should only spend a couple extra hours a week. If you're a 4-hour session, let's say that's usually the average length of a normal session is 4 hours. You should probably spend about 6 hours, not at one time. Absolutely do not do that at one time. If you got the time, go for it. But I honestly recommend breaking it up an hour a day. Kind of like it's a hobby. It's not, and like you're saying, it's not a job. But I think if you spend about 6 hours on it throughout the week, it's going to be a better time because you may actually come back in and realize that you have maybe too strong of monsters, or maybe this plot line just doesn't make enough sense. So take time and actually work on the campaign.
Yeah, in the beginning, the first time, that would make sense to spend that much time. On a weekly reoccurring campaign, if you're still spending 6 hours for your 4-hour session, I'm sorry, that's
a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
But yeah, as a new I was learning the mechanics that I was like, okay, what do I need my NPCs to do? What will
What are
work
their
with that?
personalities and things like that?
Yeah, because you're building a world if you're not using a module. You're building whatever you need to fit. And again, you could prepare a whole lot and then they decide to go to the left when everything you've prepared is to the right. So you have to be able to change it. And you could still use those. You're like, oh, if you do this, you're going to encounter this, and they do something completely different. You go, okay, well, then further down the line, you encounter that thing. So you can still use the stuff that you've prepared. You just kind of change how they encounter it, which was a big thing that I had a couple of things that they didn't go there. And I'm sitting there going, I prepared all of this.
That happens. So it's that A to O conversation. So I'm walking my way. You think I'm going to B, and all of a sudden you end up at O. Best way to put it, if you ever watched One Piece, I know some of you have, some of you haven't. Zoro, how Zoro will just show up in a random place he's so lost. You're like, how did you had to walk in a straight line? That's all it was right there. Why are you over there on the ramparts on the other side of town?
Like Ranma 1/2.
Yep.
Oh, it's the lost character syndrome is the best way to put it. So,
But I forgot my train of thought when Zoro
yeah.
was way off to the
go?
side.
How did you get lost? It was up the stairs, right there, right there.
It was a thing.
Some paladin pushed me down the stairs. and I
Yeah.
died.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so now we're back to attacking me.
But that also applies to being a player. Preparing, think back to your first game. Were you prepared? Did you have your character? Did you have
Did you have your pencil?
thought even of where you wanted to go?
No, I had a D&D husband.
Ah, I
'Cause my
thought about getting one of those, but you had already taken the good one.
Yeah, my real husband wasn't helping me. He was too focused on what he was doing. So as a new player, I latched onto someone who was willing to kind of walk me through what I needed to do. And even now, like I've been playing for a while, but I still kind of feel like a new player just at the table because everybody has been doing it for forever.
But everybody feels like a new player. There's new classes and things coming out all the time.
Well, and that's what I was saying is I sit next to someone that is learning a new class at the same time I'm learning it. We both picked clerics, and I picked the life cleric, he picked the death or grave or whatever. And so we're both going, okay, you do this and I do this, and how does this mechanic work? So even like as a longtime player, you can just kind of match up with someone and they, oh, I'm really good at this class and you're playing it for this campaign and it's new to you. Here's what I learned, and here's what I suggest.
That's a great tip. As a new player, you should go find somebody that either knows the game really well, sit next to them, or find somebody that does what you enjoy. Like you're saying, you found somebody that plays a cleric. If you need a warlock, come find me. If you need a swashbuckler rogue, come talk to me. If you need a barbarian orc that wears a chef hat and a loincloth, go talk to Bolgg. If you need a bard, just don't play the damn game.
Bold confession time.
Oh.
I have yet to play a 5e druid. Yet to.
What?
Yet to.
5e druids they're actually really cool.
The only paladin I've played was in the failed dark campaign that we had. They're just two classes that don't interest me as much. It's not that they're not good classes, and not that I can't help you if you to come to me and I can help you theorycraft and build the way you want to. They don't hold much for me as a player.
Druid
and that's
of the
another
spores? Really? That's like the cool one. That's like, I'm going to suck your life force from you.
And that's another tip right there. Don't feel pressured into playing something you don't want. We've all heard if you're a first-time player, play a fighter. No,
don't do that. Please
don't
don't
do that.
And don't
But
necessarily
if you want to play a basic bitch fighter, play a basic bitch fighter.
Yeah,
if you want to, yeah.
And don't feel the need to do the quick builds that are listed in the player, because then you're not really attached
That's not your
to it.
that's not your character.
That's not your character.
They're there to help you, but again, they're guidelines, not hard in stone rules.
And sometimes I get frustrated because when I do it, I like to be a lot more role play based. So when I create my characters, sometimes I get made fun of for the choices of spells that I pick because they don't necessarily help with the campaign that we're running. But I'm like, but it made sense to my character.
You're picking the pretty spells, aren't you?
No,
I'm getting a lot of crap on this current campaign for Loke because they're like, we don't have an arcane caster. I am literally a bard. I'm an arcane caster, but my
The
spells
most useless
are not
class in the game.
my spells are not what they would consider an arcane caster type spells. Fireball and lightning bolt and all that. I have a lot of utilitarian spells.
Which is really what they need, but they just never ask him for it.
Because I'm a circus performer. What do I need with fireball? That would blow up the tent.
Well, you ever hear of
But-
fireworks? All right, you got the end of the show the end of the show
But
fireworks.
that's pyrotechnics. I don't need fireball.
Yeah, you do.
Major illusion. That's something I would take. Invisibility. Suddenly the person who's throwing the knives can't be seen and they're coming from all around the arena. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I want.
Well,
But lightning bolt? Nah.
well, after playing for a while, so now, like as a new player, I was trying to think of what my character would want, and now as playing for a while now, I still pick like I'd say 75% of my spells are now based off of what my character would do, but then I try to do a couple of utilitarian so that I can help out with the party instead of just hiding in the bushes and waiting for combat to be over.
It's okay to want to help the party, but I think you need to pick something that, like you're saying, I'm more for your saying, hey, just pick what feels right to the character. I always pick my spells to what feels right for my character. My Hexblade Warlock, I didn't take any real like major. I did not use Eldritch Blast at all as a Hexblade Warlock.
Yeah.
Well, as a bard, I always choose the same two spells, and that's because they are useful
Bless and Bane?
spells. No, those are not on.
You're not a real bard. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Those are both not on the bard spell list. Bane is, but Bless is not.
Oh, that's right.
But Vicious Mockery and Dissonant Whispers always on every single one of my bards spell
In the
lists.
new campaign we're about to start for a friend of ours, I have a ranger who doesn't have Hunter's Mark.
What?
How dare?
Oh. Alrighty.
Yeah, for my new for the new campaign, I'm going to pick prestidigitation just so that I could create little spores in the air whenever she gets excited. Like it's just like flavored.
Those are the cantrips can be flavor. I would honestly, as a new player, if you're going to do a first time caster as a player, I would focus more on what you can do with cantrips and not what you can do with the spells. Don't get me wrong, some of the later spells are cool, the things you can do. I can summon a mansion that I can live in. I can blow up something from miles away. That's not near as cool as what these little cantrips can do, the minor effects that they bring to some of the more humdrum of classes.
Yeah.
Also, if you're starting as a first-time player at first level, you probably only get one first-level spell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cantrips are going to be your bread and butter.
Yeah.
No, that's a question. What first level spell would you say is the most important for each spellcasting class?
All right. That's a good. That really is a good question.
So that way,
let's see I
if
can
new
pull-
players who just don't have any idea, and I mean, the spell list can be intimidating. There's
Yeah.
a lot of spells,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not sorted by your class. It's sorted by alphabetical, so it can be intimidating. So
I guess it depends upon what you kind of want to do. I think.
I mean, just as a general, like they say they want to be a bard, but they don't have an idea of what.
Okay,
what
let's
kind
take
of bard
let's take
they
the
wanna
bard out of this. Let's say you.
be.
let's take.
Well, the answer for bard is dissonant whispers. So
yeah. I think
a
as a
healing word.
but then you get into like wizards, and as a wizard, you're gonna have like the multiple classes. Honestly, my recommendation as a first time caster, play a sorcerer or don't play a warlock. Warlocks are weird. I recommend playing a sorcerer because they're very baseline stream. They can learn a lot of spells, and I know I'm not trying to tell you what to play, but I think that's a class that just.
If you play a wild magic sorcerer, you won't have to play it for very long. You're gonna kill yourself, probably your party too.
Yeah.
Just by law statistics, it's gonna happen. That not to scare you away from playing it, because that's hilarious.
No.
It is so much fun to play a wild magic sorcerer.
I honestly, I think it just in general, detect magic. If I had to recommend one spell that every caster should have is detect magic, because if you know magic, you're going to be adept in arcane. Yeah. And I think that's just something that's going to, not only is it going to help you,
And
it's going to help the party.
It can be cast as a ritual, so you don't have to use your one spell slot a day.
Yeah.
So yeah, back in old editions before we had such things as cantrips, I used to give detect magic as basically a free spell to the players where they didn't have to use a spell slot to do it. Just because that the logic of it, if you've studied magic your whole life enough that you can cast spells, you would think you'd have some kind of sense attunement to be able to tell something is magic or not. Now, it may not glow for you the way the spell makes it nice and easy, but
Yeah, that's similar to one that I should probably take more often than I do, but it's very helpful, especially in role play campaigns. Comprehend languages.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's for bard, sorcerer, warlock, and wizard. It's so useful in, like, if you go to another continent and you suddenly don't speak their dialect, it helps.
Yeah.
It helps a lot. I mean, if you go to the Elvish community and you're a party of, humans and dwarves that don't speak Elvish, now you've got to have some way of speaking to them.
that was something that 5e with their everybody starts with common
They were trying to,
kind of
yeah.
nerf. That used to be a very important spell in old editions because most elves didn't start with human common. They spoke Elvish as their only language.
Yeah, but that's still true with DMs like myself, who, as a writer and a DM, I'm into protagonist abuse. I'm going to make sure that your life is a hell at points. So if you go to that Elvish town, guess what? They're not talking. They're not speaking in common.
Oh.
They're using Elvish, and they'll refuse to use common.
Yep.
They're like the French.
yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing to you guys in the steampunk campaign. You went to a different continent, nobody spoke the language. Done.
So here's another tip. We were talking about this during lunch. Actually, before Bolgg and got there, I wanted to talk about something new players kind of get. They get this mindset that they have to do when they begin playing is buying every book, and this is a big one. As a new player, I really don't want you feeling like you have to go out and buy a new book. Somebody at the table is going to be willing to share their player's handbook, and that's really all you need to get started. Even as a DM, there's actually stuff in the player's handbook to get you going as a DM. Now, when my kid brother says, "Hey, I'm starting to play D&D with friends," he was playing on Discord. I actually went and bought him a base. There was a Amazon set that had the monster manual, the DM's handbook, the player handbook, and a screen. And I think I threw in Xanthar's and Tasha's because those are my two favorite books. That right there was, I didn't have to do that. He didn't need that to play. there's plenty of websites, there's plenty of spots for information out there that you can get it. Like we use the D&D 5th edition community wiki that's where we get all our information when we reference spells or abilities or feats, anything like that. That's out there. You can do everything you need right there.
It's dnd5e.wikidot.com. That's the one we use.
And I'd mentioned before that I use the 5e companion app.
Mm-hmm.
It's a free app with ads. You can pay for it to get rid of the ads. That basically gives you the full monster manual.
And the ads on that aren't like giant in your face ads either. They're just like banner ads that are it's not anything bad at all.
So there you basically that gives you the full monster manual for all the regular monsters.
Yeah, because listing price of like I'm just looked on Amazon just real quick. It's at the time of this podcast, it's like half off right now almost. But the regular listing price of a player's handbook is $50, which is a little ridiculous. Go to a shop. You can go to like a D&D local shop like Phoenix Emporium and probably go get one for a lot cheaper. But the idea, though, is you don't have to have that. You can pay $3, get this app. You can go see one of those experienced players who's probably got the most rattiest copy of the player's handbook. The pages are falling out of order.
Use the library. Most libraries now have a copy of the player's handbook.
Yes,
our
on lock and key.
All of our local ones have it. You can check it out. One of our friends. Actually, that's how he got his DMG and his monster manual. He went there, he borrowed them, and never returned them.
Yeah, it was cheaper for him to just pay the late fee.
The fees,
and then
pay the buyout instead of the late.
Yes.
Yeah. And we mentioned that we like almost every player at our table uses third-party apps or uses something, and so you can get. There are so many dice downloads you can do. We have stuff for spells. We have stuff for everything. You can find it and you can utilize it that way. And sometimes it's even better because we'll sit there and like if I leave the table, I just pull up my dice roller app because I needed to do something, but it was my turn to roll. So I pull up my app, I roll the dice real quick and I go, oh yeah, I got a 16 or whatever.
Yeah. As Android users, pretty much everybody in this room, I believe,
well, in this room.
Yeah, in this room. I know there are a lot more Apple users out there, but not user-friendly for a lot of us. So, but Android users, 5e Companion app is a good one for DMs. Very good one for DMs. Crit Dice is one that I use that has...
Yeah, there's good dice rolling apps on
this one is like $2 for the full version, and you get access to like complicated dice rollers. Fifth edition character sheet is one I think we all pretty much use. Yeah. And that one's I think $3.
It's free to do the first level, and then to advance in levels it's $3.
And then
it's a one-time $3, not per character, not per use. One-time fee of $3.
And then Spellbook Burned is another one that we all use. These are excellent tools that you can get right on your phone, that you don't have to go and spend $50 on a book.
I'm going to tell you, I don't have any like character sheet apps for Apple because I always bring my pencil. That's, like I said, that's my rule number one. I always have a pencil. But I can tell you, one of my favorite dice rolling apps, which is always great to have, because sometimes you forget your dice somewhere. Sometimes there's not enough dice. There's always going to be somebody that has like their big bag of die. Guaranteed. But in case you're at let's say you're going out to a Adventures Guild for the first time, which is a great thing for new players. We'll get to that here in a second. The D&D dice, that's all it's called. And it gives you everything from a D2, which is just a coin flip, all the way to a D100. And you can actually re-roll. Oh, they must have done, their update messed this up.
Yeah, even like the Fitbit has a dice roller app on it. Like for my Versa, I could just roll, I think it's called Dice even on it. And you just roll from my watch. So there's apps everywhere for anything. You can find it.
So, to summarize, you don't need the book.
Yeah.
You don't need the book.
Don't feel pressured into buying the book.
You don't need equipment. Yeah. You can actually just play with tokens. Actually, there's a story out there, you can Google it, where actually convicts were playing with playing cards.
Playing cards, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that if you're going to a table that has experienced players, if you've played for longer than a couple of weeks, you turn into a dice goblin. Everybody's got extra sets. Every one of us has just like piles.
And if you're playing with an experienced group, it's like we said earlier, we were loading up the car earlier, and I was like, we don't need the books because we know people are going to be there with the books. and we have the apps. So it's
And sometimes, like, I will borrow a book that we don't have, and I'll go, hey, I need this for my one character. I'll go to that page, and I'll take a picture of it, and then I have that reference for whenever I need it. It's on my phone, and I can just look at it.
What's also great about that, too, is somebody's going to have those books. Guaranteed. Somebody will have, not everybody, who here buys every module?
nope.
Nah, see, that's the thing. Not everybody, because not every module applies to every player. Some of them are more player focused. Some of them are more DM focused. Some of them are straight about monsters. Mordecai's Tome of Foes, which is really great. If you're a warlock that wants to summon demons, I recommend that book. But somebody's going to have the book that you want because it's going to appeal. Sorry about that. It's going to appeal to somebody else. So you can always find the player that it appeals to and go, hey, can I borrow your Sword Coast Adventures guide? Can I? Damn, this is coming back to get me, isn't it? Can I borrow your Xanthar's guide? You know, things like that. So you're going to be able to find a player with those books.
So,
Yeah.
but there is a question in that though. What books, if say they wanted to go out and buy them, what books would you recommend for a new player?
Well, obviously, the
Player
player's
who,
handbook.
yeah,
Player's
player who
handbook,
doesn't
number
DM,
one.
a player's handbook, Xanthar's, and Tasha's. Those are
Yeah,
Those are
absolutely.
the three
first
main
three.
that we go,
yeah.
Because some
Yeah.
of the best, the only one I would add to that too is I would add the Skag Sword Coast Adventures guide because it's got a couple of extra classes and really good cantrips that are in there that don't make it into
Well,
those other books.
If you add some of the, then you add the Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, which is where you have like
But
the
if
Drake
I-
Warden and
If
a
I
couple
could,
of these
those,
other classes.
those 4 books though, right there, because they act like I said, there's a couple extra good cantrips and there's a couple of updates to rules that are really good in the Skag.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I wanted to throw that in there.
It also is a good introduction to the Forgotten Realms because the Skag is set in Forgotten Realms. Sword
Yeah,
Coast.
if they're playing in the Forgotten.
Yeah, but it's still a good.
Well, and that
See,
brings up a point that kind of like relates to our earlier conversation was that if you are a new DM and you want to do something, if they've only got those 3 books but you're pulling from a different book, then have resources for them because sometimes, Loki, you'll say, "Oh, you got this treasure." But you have to find it in the DM's guide, like it's in a different book. But if you have just like I think we used to like hand out for when you did the Adventurers Guild, you would hand
I
out
had
little cards that would have
cards,
the
yep.
information of what you just got. So if you have it and you know nobody else does, or you don't expect. Well, there's the tip. Don't expect everybody to have the resources. So if you're going to pull something that's very specific and you want them to have it, and you're giving out like treasures or whatever, if you have the book, or if someone else has the book, then have that particular page or information available in a different format. For
That's-
people.
Another app I didn't mention is I use the 5e treasure generator.
I was going to say Among Us because we've got Among Us over there.
I'll actually one up.
5e treasure generator.
I one up with you with that one, and the always bring a pencil and have that information. When I do my character sheets, this is a great tip that I think helps. You don't worry about writing down the entire spell's information on the back of a character sheet. Try to remember, okay, Fireball does this at this, and at this level. What I do is I write down Fireball, page 138, PGH, PHB, Player's Handbook. I write down the page it's found on, and the book that it's in, because I can write page 134, but that could be of Xanthar's Guide, that could be of Skag, it could be of anywhere. Write these things down next to where it is, so that way you can go.
Or you just download the Spellbook Burn app and
Some of
hit
us
the little checkbox.
Some of us only have iPhone because we're part of a real cult.
Well, and then sometimes, like for
Jobs is
when
dead.
you level up, I'll take a picture of that level up chart because I don't want to have to keep going back to that page for that book. So I have that whenever I know, oh, hey, we're going to be leveling up this time. I should have that information. So I keep a picture on my phone of the chart so I know, okay, I'm going to get another spell, or I'm going to get this feed or whatever. So if you're not using the third-party apps for your characters and you're just doing it off of paper, but I have that picture, or you have the information of what's going to happen when you level up.
And as much shit as we give wizards for like being money grubbing, they have some cool tools out there for players and DMs. They have the spell cards, the monster cards. They have something we just bought recently, the World Builder's Journal, which is basically a series of writing prompts to help you build your world.
Yeah.
They have a flip book of graph paper where you can write down notes and draw maps and all that kind of stuff for players. They have character sheets galore, stuff for free you can download. They have the Unearthed Arcana. there is so many tools out there to help you as a new DM, as a new player, to better understand the game.
Yeah.
So you have the
Status
option of being
rings and-
completely with
Monster
nothing,
tokens
or
and-
you have pay a whole bunch of money. So you have the option. You don't have to have everything, but there are a lot of things that you can do.
There's free to play and there's whales.
Yeah.
So and that's true of online games. It's true of D&D as well.
Yeah,
Because
some
I'll tell
D&D
you,
games are sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Trust us.
yeah, and I'll tell you, as a longtime player, for a long time, I had no books. I relied on other people to have that stuff.
That's Bakaw's thing. I don't think Bakaw owns. We never talked about that. Bakaw doesn't own a single book. He just owns a bunch of friends with their books.
Yeah.
Oh, and he owns dice. He owns stuff. He doesn't carry it.
Nope.
He'll
that's
show up and he's like, "Oh, hey, my dice is here," and then
That's
and
Nickel
we-
Wart's
he-
job.
Yeah, we expect he expects us to hand it to him, and we do
Yep.
because that's what we have extra. We always do.
And that it wasn't until I got into college that I really started buying the books and started having stuff on hand. I mean, in high school, I had one book,
It was about
the
time
Book
you
of
learned
Vile
to read.
Darkness. The Book of Vile Darkness was the only book I owned. I had my dad's copies of the older manuals and stuff like that, but if I bought it, I would usually lend it out, and it was gone. So I just learned in high school to learn to rely off of other people, and that's fine if you're in a school setting. I highly now that back when we were in school, there were no smartphones. YouTube
Yeah,
was
thanks
brand
for aging
new.
us.
When Loke was in school, there were landlines. When my dad was in school, they
When
had
Loke was in
stone
school, they were-
tablets.
as I say.
Abacus.
Yeah. So there are resources right there at your hands, younger players. You guys, you don't know the struggle. You don't know what it was like.
Well, damn, they're uphill both ways in the snow here in Florida.
Hey,
You didn't
even
have-
back in second edition, I used the Core Rules program on my computer.
Yeah, man. There's always been ways around it.
Oh yeah,
What was it like playing with Van Gogh and Da Vinci?
we
I'll have
when
to
I was
ask Nigel Wart.
when I was first starting, we did a lot off of the paper player, character building sheets.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Oh, hey, you got an extra one?" That would go around. We would start a new camp. Does anybody have an extra sheet?
That was something we were going to talk about a little bit, was that the Adventurers Guild, there's a lot of resources that are available. When I was running it, I made sure there were character sheets in stock. I made sure that I had those cards, that I had extra dice that could be rented, or even just borrowed if I'm being really nice to a new player,
If there's anything you can do as a new player that really wants to learn the game, I'm going to tell you an Adventurers Guild is probably one of the best places to start, because you're going to have a lot of players that come in. The only issue I think I have with the Adventurers Guild is sometimes they do pre-created characters and stuff, so you don't get to play you get to play somebody else. But they have all the rules. It's a very easy setting to walk into. There's going to be somebody there that's like, new players, come over here. This is what this whole table's about. It's just new players, people who've never played the game before.
I remember my first game in 5e was at Adventurers Guild. It was with James. And I was like, okay, do I have to calculate Thaco? What can I do? Because I feel like this is really easy, really simple. It's got to be more complicated, right? And they're like, no, it's really this simple. You guys, 5e is so approachable. It is so damn approachable that it still blows my mind. Look, do you miss calculating Thaco?
Yes.
You're weird.
I miscalculating like Pathfinder when you got to confirm your hit.
I mean, okay.
So,
you guys are weird. Most people are happy that Thaco is gone. That it's so much easier to just go, well, there's a number. Do I beat the number? Yeah, I hit.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's approachable.
But then it's also made it harder, and this may be a conversation for another time, because now you have all the multitude to say when you used to have a will, a fort, and a con save. Like, those used to be a lot. To me, that was a lot easier.
Yeah, I guess.
So but that, like I said, conversation for another time, because this is about things for new players and new DMs to do. So
yeah.
Yeah, we don't know that stuff.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to say is that there are so many resources, and the game itself has evolved to a point where it is as approachable as it will ever be, I think, unless they dumb it down even further and homogenize and gentrify and
don't use fancy words like that.
yeah.
No one cares.
I think right now is the best time to start D&D because you have
Anytime's
the
a
older
good time to start D&D.
you have the older players who've been playing for a while who are, well versed in 5e at this point, who have played the older editions. And then you have new players who are getting in, they're excited, and they're being able to build whatever they want to build, which was something that wasn't available really in older editions. I think 5e is probably, it's not D&D's final form, but it might be its ultimate form.
Well, I'm not going to say ultimate form, but it's definitely a good. It's definitely not the final
It's
form.
the most fine-tuned form.
Yeah,
to date.
it's got more
To
balance.
date,
Yeah,
yes.
it's got more balance to it than ever. I think that if you really want to start it now, anytime's a good time. You got plenty of resources out there. I could tell you another tip that I would honestly have for new players is just do it. Just go out there. Go look on Facebook. Look on Google. You can find plenty of spots out there of people looking for players and stuff like that. There's what's the D&D website that you can play online? They actually are very it's Roll20, right?
Roll20,
Yeah.
D&D.
I would recommend, though, for first-time players, if at all possible, go someplace to play in person.
Yeah. I mean, I know but
Online
I know
is a different experience. It's not for everyone. Some people love it. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
It
I
could
didn't
be-
like it.
but-
We tried to do it when the lockdown happened, and I just couldn't play it. I was so frustrated. All of the fun of being in a group and having everybody interacting took away the fun for me, and I could not play it online.
Yeah, so I would recommend, if at all possible, for a first-time player, at least for that first time, to try it, and if possible. I mean, if you're in the sticks in Alaska, online might be your only option.
You got like 2 sticks in all of Alaska.
Or you're the only nerd in town.
Yeah.
And not in Tampa St. Pete, you're not.
Yeah, Tampa St. Pete, there's plenty of places where you could get a live game into.
Yeah. So here's another tip that we haven't really talked about. As a new player, you are not expected to role play out loud or do voices or do accents. If you want to, go ahead, but it shouldn't be expected. And if your DM expects it, they should also be one to help coach you through what you would need to do. So they should be doing voices as well if they want you to do it.
And I want to flip that and throw it into the DM's tip for a new DM. Don't feel like you have to give each character this ornate personality and in their own voice for everything. Not everybody is a critical role where they're master voice actors that have been working for years. No, you're somebody new trying to do this. You've got a lot on your plate. You've got anywhere between 3 to 6 players, maybe 8 if you're a bigger campaign. I recommend keeping it small for a first-time DM. You're already trying to juggle them. Don't try and juggle more on your plate. Keep it simple.
Yeah. But before the current campaign where I started to feel more comfortable and I have a character who actually has a Southern accent and she maintains it for most of the game. But when I was first playing in Loke's campaign, I would say, oh, my character says this and my character did this. I wasn't role-playing so much as explaining what I would expect my character to do.
A lot of groups have their own way of saying, okay, this is out of character. Like when we started the Adventurers Guild with James, it was putting a fist on your head. That's how you're saying this is out of character. If your fist is off your head, you're talking in character, no matter what you say.
And your words have consequences.
Yes, they do.
Oh yeah, Loke constantly goes, "Is that what you really do? All right, roll." And you're like, "Wait, no." He's like, "No, you did it."
Oh, I'm a vindictive DM. I like if you're just out there talking and you're just like and things, especially if things are kind of coming to a stall. Mm-hmm. I, as a DM, will just go, "Oh, okay, cool. This is what you're doing." No, you said it, bud.
Yeah. If players are joking around and like, I kicked the big bad. Okay, here's what's happened.
Things have consequences.
I'm one of those who loves to improv and joke, and I've had it, thrown in my face a couple of times.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. You learn to live with it, or you learn to,
Yeah. Oh, we're
be in
stealthing.
character when you need to be in character and be out of character when you need to be out of
We're
character.
stealthing through the dungeon and someone starts screaming and it's like they were joking about something else and you're like, oh, well, you've just alerted them.
Everybody knows you're
Everyone
here.
knows.
Everybody's
here.
walking through the dungeon,
But
and everybody's sneaking.
Also, if you're a first-time player, you're not expected to carry the fun yourself.
No.
You don't.
You're
aren't
gonna be
expect-
fun, trust
Yeah.
me, because you're gonna make the mistakes and be okay with making mistakes. Because people are gonna laugh at you, and it's gonna be for fun though. We're not laughing at you because we're mocking you. We're laughing at you because what you've done was something outrageously hilarious.
and something usually we've all done ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. We've
maybe
all
twice.
done-
I'm just saying, don't feel the pressure that I might be bad at D&D. You can't be bad at D&D.
I beg to differ.
You can be.
You can be not fun, but that's not bad.
That's bad.
I have in the rules in my original AG. Don't be a dick. That's how you be bad at D&D.
Yeah.
Oh. Alrighty, guys. With that being said, this has been a great episode. I want to thank you, Drava, for hanging out with us today.
Of course.
I've got my bestest buddy, Loke.
Oh, yeah.
You weren't
Fine.
ready for that one.
No.
And
Yeah,
my
out of order.
good buddy, the one and only Chef Bolgg. That's you, bud.
Oh, sorry. I was staring at a pretty lady.
I am the Pirate Captain. We're out. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you listening to Chef Bolgg and the Pirate Captain's recipes for everything, featuring Loke the Bard, of course. Make sure you go find us on Facebook to see what old concoctions Bolgg is cooking up in the kitchen. And if you want your emails read, then email us at bolgandpc@gmail.com. And as always, happy adventures. Yarr.